Hold on to your seat cheeks. It's the Dan Lanning podcast coming up next. A real intro today. I just have to kind of get into it and roll. I got a whole lot of stuff going on, but I wouldn't take it beat and not talk about college football. Not a whole lot of changes to the poll this week. Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Texas and Florida State flip-flop 3-4. USC 5, Ohio State 6, Penn State 7, Washington 8, Notre Dame 9. Am I even looking at the right week here? I am. There we go. Oregon 10. They move up after flattening Colorado. Let's take a second on that, huh? My goodness. We knew it was probably going to be a decimation. The trenches were the difference. We know Shedeur Sanders holds on to the football too long and takes a whole lot of sacks. And it was a decimation there in Oregon. Dan Lanning firing up his team. We don't do it for clicks. Helmet on helmet. Something to that effect. His pregame speech. He welcomed the cameras in. They caught that piece and ran with it all throughout the broadcast. And another guy taking a shot there, Deion Sanders. And of course, he opens himself up to be flattened by teams that feel that they're not getting the same attention as he is, despite being better football teams. This week, they'll be hosting USC. But man, what a decimation that was for those of us that know he's, lacking a little talent outside of the wide receiver and quarterback positions. 42-6 was the final there. It was 35-0 at the half, and Oregon kind of let off the gas at the end there. Washington pounds Colorado 59-32. Don't be too alarmed. California put up a bunch of points in the second half there once the third, fourth stringers went in there. Quarterback was on the bench, Penix, in the third quarter. It wasn't even, a late resting. It was decimation early, so don't be too concerned about the points given up. Colorado not at the bottom of the barrel as far as Power 5 teams are concerned, so we'll see what Washington does against better competition coming up. Iowa played better competition. Penn State at the whiteout, 31-0 was the score. Iowa is horrific. And the offense is just, they don't throw to their wide receivers. They were out running backs, tight ends, all kinds of problems there. They're going to struggle to score against anybody, despite the fact that they have a decent quarterback back there this season, Cade McNamara. Notre Dame was ranked 9th at the time. They didn't welcome in, but they brought in number 6 Ohio State in a battle. I'm still not sure I like Ohio State's quarterback very much, but Sam Hartman wasn't very good either in this matchup. McCord hit passes of 19, 21, and 23 yards on the final drive to set up a 1-yard run. As time expired, they put another second back on the clock, but 17-14 was the final in this top 10 matchup. The first one of the season, I believe, here. And he just hit the shots needed too late. 21 of 35 is what he ended up with for 240. Did not look great throughout the game, though. I just don't know what he's going to do. They only have a few big games left, of course, Penn State and Michigan towards the back end here. Neither offense looked super great. You have a lot of questions here. Travion Henderson had 14 carries for 104 and a touchdown. Cade Stover had 7 grabs for 52. Egbuka had 7 for 96. Harrison, 3 catches for 32, was limited a bit there. Both defenses, you can say, did a great job, but really the offenses didn't do a great job executing. And speaking of not executing well, Notre Dame, 10 players on defense on the field for the last 2 plays. All kinds of excuses as to why they didn't run someone on for at least the very last play, why they didn't intentionally commit a penalty to give them an opportunity to put someone on the field. I mean, half the distance to the goal from the one, just a couple inches, just to try and possibly save the game there. Horrible decisions by Notre Dame, and that can be the difference between a great team and a national championship team. Notre Dame, USC, and Clemson still on the schedule here. Ohio State dodges a bullet, still has a lot of questions. UCLA has lots of questions. Dante Moore. Oh, Dante, what are you doing? Guy from Detroit here. Checked out one of his last high school games in the region here. But man, went and played Utah, whose offense is horrific without Cam Rising. Maybe he'll be back again this week. Maybe he'll be back in a few weeks after Utah's bye. That's speculation right now. 14-7 is the final. Just a horrible Horrible game, really. Just came down to the defense. Dante Moore threw a pick six last week on the opening drive. He threw on the first play of the game as well here, and that was the difference. They scored a touchdown late, but Utah also put one on the board, so 14-7 was the difference. Utah stifled UCLA, who themselves, the Bruins, have a good defense. Just not a lot of points here, very boring ball game. But Dante Moore was not pulled for a different quarterback in this game. He stayed in, and he finished, let's see here, 15 for 35 passing, 234 yards, a touchdown, and that critical pick. After sack yardage, he took 51 yards in sack yardage. It was 9 yards rushing. 60 is what they ended up with altogether there. Nate Johnson for Utah, 9 for 17 passing for 117 and a touchdown. Again, his goal is just to run the ball around. But the offense here, I believe they combined for less than 500 yards altogether. Yeah, it was like 460 something between the two teams. That is just disgusting by today's standards. Utah now, according to Michael Stats and Info, that's me, I did the counting. 4-0 with wins over Florida, Baylor, and UCLA. Arguably a top 5 resume right now. Not a really big win, but they've played some decent competition there. Baylor's starting to stink it up, but, They played with their number 3 quarterback and their number 4 quarterback here, who's really a running back in college, but played quarterback in high school, and he's had to resume that role. They've only sustained 6 drives that have resulted in touchdowns in 4 games. One of them was only 49 yards. You can really not count that. I'm just talking about like 60, 70, 80-yard drives, multiple plays moving down the field. So only 6 sustained drives in their 4-0 start, and 3 of them came against Weber State. The defense has scored a few times. They've, of course, scored on shorter fields set up by the defense. Less than 30 yards, and they hit that 170-yard bomb against Florida. They've also missed a third of their field goals. I think they're 2 for 6 altogether now. 4 for 6. They've missed 2. So the offense just barely hanging in there. The defense had, in this particular game, 11 tackles for loss and 7 sacks, I believe, against Dante Moore, plus the interception that was returned for a touchdown. So the defense keeping them in it, but the offense has looked terrific. Again, Cam Rising coming back may make a big difference in them converting first downs, getting the ball to where it needs to be, having a real quarterback that's skilled in there. Again, their original backup, I believe, was lost for the season in practice as well. But it's just been very difficult to get things going. But you also have to wonder, he's going to be kind of, coming back mid-season, or at this point, how rusty is he going to be? And also, how much of an elevator is he going to be? You hear he's a big impact player, but is he still going to get this team to a level where they can compete with Washington, Oregon, and USC? That remains to be seen. Number 3, Texas went on the road and stifled Baylor 38-6. Michigan eventually beat up on Rutgers 31-7, covering that darn spread. That was a push, actually. 24 points. Georgia eventually got up on UAB big. 49-21 was the final there. Again, giving up some points on the back end. I didn't catch much of any of this at all. I believe they had backups in, but still you don't see them bleed points on the back end usually. USC struggled horribly with Arizona State. 42-28 was the eventual ending score there. Again, Arizona State was shut out at home by Fresno State last week. They had 8 turnovers. This week, they still had multiple injuries building up. This should have been like 70-0. That was the potential. They were able to get a pass rush at times on Caleb Williams. They were able to move the ball, although, man, the backup there, Pine, who was the backup for Notre Dame last year, now the backup for Arizona State, he was on his seat cheeks a whole lot. He was sure getting sacked, and they hung around, though. They hung around for quite a while, but USC pulled it out. Possible it was a look-ahead game to Colorado, playing on the road here for USC. They might put, again, some big points up on Colorado. Looking forward to the Deion Sanders beatdown that they're hoping for. Could be some points back and forth, though. Again, the defense not quite solved there, giving up 28 on the road. What else do we have here? LSU, Arkansas. I didn't watch much of this. 34-31 was the final. SEC is great football generally, but even these middling teams are kind of a struggle to watch now. Speaking of which, Alabama and Ole Miss, 24-10 was the final as Alabama eventually pulls away 11 points in the third and a touchdown in the fourth as Ole Miss just can't do anything. Washington State was impressive against Oregon State, 38-35, 28 points in the first half. A great job. Cam Ward finally looks good. The offense was a little stinky last year, I should say. Last few weeks, they've managed to roll up wins now against Oregon State and Wisconsin. Solid there. Two teams that could still finish in the top 25 on the year. Cam Ward finished with 404 yards passing and 4 touchdowns against a defense that's supposed to be pretty good. And on the offensive side for the Beavers, DJ Ungalele, 17 for 34 for 198, a touchdown and a pick. They did a great job on the ground, over 200 yards rushing on Washington State's defense, but really impressive by the Cougars. Oregon State outscored the Cougars 21-3 in the fourth quarter to kind of make the score a little bit closer there. But man, oh man, great performance by Washington State. Oklahoma took forever on the road to get going against Cincinnati. Emory Jones, the former Arizona Sun Devil and Florida Gator for Cincinnati, just not great, man. Not a great player, unfortunately. 20-6, Oklahoma eventually wraps that up. North Carolina, I didn't get to watch a ton of, but they were up 28-17 on Pittsburgh at the half, eventually pulling away 41-24. Again, the defense is better. They're still not awesome. Drake May, 22 for 30, 296-1, not a Heisman winner. Ground game, Omarion had 18 carries for 66 and a touchdown there. Again, improvements, but this isn't a world-beating team. Djokovic, the former Eagle of Boston College, now at Pitt, was 11 for 15 passing. I believe he got knocked out of this game. The backup was 7 for 18 with 2 picks. Pitt's just very gross right now. They're 1-3. They did manage 5 sacks, which is what they're known for, so very disruptive there. But just not the blowout you kind of expected this offense to have for North Carolina, even though they were on the road against a team that still generates pressure. So Duke rolled up a 41-7 win at UConn. Miami won big over Temple. Tennessee did put away a struggling UTSA team. No quarterback. They played their second and third quarterback in this one. No Frank Harris there, the starting quarterback for UTSA, though. So that's unfortunate. Florida managed to beat Charlotte, and just not an awesome team this year as Charlotte. So 22-7 wasn't exactly exciting as the Florida Gators managed to take them down at home eventually. Graham Mertz was 20 for 23 for 259 and a touchdown. Ground game was a little bit more sluggish, and defense looked okay. Held them to 7 points. Again, the back end of the poll saw a lot of teams sliding up and down, but the top 10 stayed largely the same. The only team that dropped out was Kansas State, and Florida hopped back in. Tennessee fell the furthest at 12 spots down, and we had a few guys jump up, 3 spots. North Carolina slid up a bit. Duke, and that's with the Colorado sliding down and the Alabama sliding down to provide that wiggle space. So, but nothing too outrageous. Clemson, Missouri, Kansas State, TCU, Fresno State, Kansas sitting just outside the top 25, still receiving votes. Okay, now your watch guide for this upcoming week. Again, a little bit lighter slate. Starting on Thursday, and I should have this up by Thursday, the 28th, 3 games. We have Jacksonville State, who's looking pretty sly so far at first year at the FBS level. And a lot of teams that are prepared to move up to this level have immediate success as they enter into Conference USA or the Sun Belt Conference. They're usually pretty fired up and ready to go and have that support ready, which even some of the lower level non-Power 5 schools do not have that kind of support. So they're currently 3-1. They're traveling to Sam Houston, who's 0-3. They're actually first season for them as well at the FBS level, as I say that. So they're struggling a little bit, but this is the first Conference USA conference game for both of these teams. So Jacksonville State on the road at Sam Houston at 8 o'clock on ESPNU. Jacksonville State is favored. Let's see. With the 7:30 game is Temple at Tulsa. A couple 2-2 teams as well there. That's on ESPN. And CBS Sports Network at 7:30 has Middle Tennessee at Western Kentucky. 1-3 Middle Tennessee. Western Kentucky is 2-2. Still have their old kid there, Austin Reed, throwing the ball all over the place. They lost 27-24 at Troy last week, 63-10 at Ohio State. They did put up points over South Florida and HCU as well at the FCS level. So still able to throw the ball there when they're playing relative competition. So they might put up some points there on Middle Tennessee. That is a 60-point over-under, the highest of the non-weekend games. So moving into Friday, we have a quartet. At 7 o'clock, we have NC State at 3-1 hosting Louisville at 4-0. Louisville is actually favored on the road. You'd think this would be a really big game here. But NC State, 24 points in each of the 3 games it's played against FBS teams this year. They survived Virginia last week on a penalty that set up a game-winning field goal. And I got to tell you, the offense still looks disgusting. Louisville has a top offense in the country, in part because of a 56-28 blowout of Boston College last week. Again, still giving up points on the back end. A lot of possessions, but still, Boston College is not super great. They struggled against Indiana and Georgia Tech. So although you have a 3-1 and a 4-0 team here out of the ACC, they're not very good. They're not very good at all. I think it was Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback, national championship winner, I believe, who has his own podcast, which is enjoyable. But he noted the ACC, such a great conference this year. And my first thought was, what in the hell are you talking about? Louisville may be 4-0. Syracuse may be 4-0. NC State may be 3-1. But the ACC still really sucks. They still have some teams that moved up to like good teams or even great teams. Florida State's up there. Miami's good this year. North Carolina's up there this year. I'm missing someone else important. I don't think Clemson's that bad. They had a couple catastrophe games. And Duke's good. You have 5 good teams, and arguably the middle class is still bad teams. And then the bad is really bad. So ACC about 5-6 good teams, and the rest are still really, really garbage. So I would heavily contest the point that ACC is a good conference this year. They just aren't a dumpster fire. Now, sticking on Friday, you have that 7 o'clock standalone game, and then you have a couple 9 o'clocks and a 10:15. So, hope you plan on staying up late. One of them is probably one of the top 5 games of the weekend. Oregon State ranked 19th, 3-1 after that Washington State loss. They're hosting the Utah Utes, ranked 10th, 4-0. Maybe Cam Rising, maybe not. Wouldn't quite expect it. Again, I believe their bye week is next week. As a result, the Beavers, I believe they're currently favored by a field goal here, 44.5 point over-under. Again, Utah's offense is not good. It's not good. But the defense is very dominant. Oregon State played their first quality opponent last week, and the DJ Uiagalelei did not look good. They're still able to run the ball. I don't think they'll be that successful against against Utah. A little surprised they're favored by a field goal here. Very shocking, but we'll get a chance to see if Utah's luck runs out with no Cam Rising, or if Oregon is able to really not quite put the first wrench in the Pac-12 plans, but if they're able to beat Utah, we're going to have a whole bunch of teams with one loss already. It'll be Oregon State, Utah, Washington State, Colorado, who isn't really in the mix, but UCLA as well. We'll start to see these teams start to sort themselves out a little bit. Also at 9 o'clock, 1-4 UTEP will host Louisiana Tech on CBS Sports Network. That's a coin flipper. And BYU will be hosting Cincinnati on ESPN at 2:15. BYU is now 3-1. They took their first loss last week. 44 yards rushing at less than 2.5 yards per clip. It was 9 yards and 0.4 yards per rush after sack yardage last week. 3 turnovers, 2 that led to scores. They were awful. Cincinnati, again, played Oklahoma, who looked sluggish and still could do nothing at home. This is going to be an ugly game, and Cincinnati's favored by 2 on the road. So there you go. BYU and Cincinnati. 10:15 ESPNU if you're looking to find something to dose off to. So there you go. Moving on to Saturday, which is the 30th. In the noon window, we got 10 games again. It's light. 3 ranked teams are playing. The top game I have the top watch is Colorado hosting USC, just because it's a good old time. I think the line's sitting around 3 touchdowns still. Colorado will have an opportunity to put points up against USC. That defense, again, completely problem solved there. Lincoln Riley had the same problem that Colorado had in the coaching change last year and grabbing guys, assembling the roster greatly from the transfer portal. And defensive linemen, offensive linemen of a high caliber don't just materialize there. So maybe a year apart in the building process. Still possible to win a national championship this year for USC, but not all problems are solved on either side of the lines for either team yet. It would just be nice if we could see both quarterbacks play a good game and flip the ball over the place, because neither one looked good last week at all. I'd be fine with a shootout. 73.5 point over-under. That's what is expected. Again, noon at Fox. The Colorado fans will be going crazy. Your channel flip games, I put 4 of them here. Kentucky's 4-0. They're hosting Florida, who's 3-1 and ranked 22nd. This is the ESPN game. They'll all be going wild. And honestly, I don't think Kentucky's very good. They're favored by a point at home. That's basically a coin flip. Florida, again, Graham Mertz not giving a lot, but they don't want him to. They want to be able to run the ball. They want to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. And Devin O'Leary just still not spectacular. Didn't look good at NC State last year before he was hurt and lost for the season. And now at Kentucky, and just hasn't been a super impressive team this year. Can't say I've watched a ton of them. I don't know if the offensive line is getting reworked. The defense still, it's supposed to be a dominant calling card, but they still gave up 14 points to Ball State. They eked by East Kentucky. They gave up 28 to Vanderbilt. So I'm not entirely sure why Kentucky can't just put something together and start blowing some teams out, like some of the upper middle class some years of the SEC. But that'll be an interesting one. Florida at Kentucky. Also in the SEC, Arkansas is 2-2. Struggling by now. They're hosting Texas A&M, who's 3-1, the SEC network. Texas A&M 6.5 point favorite. Now, Max Johnson, the former LSU Tiger, transferred in to Texas A&M. Good player. He had to come in for Wingman, who I'm just seeing is out for the rest of the season with a foot injury. That's no fun. That's no fun at all. Max Johnson's still a quality quarterback, could still be a starter, and he will be the starter moving forward for the Aggies. But man, that throws a wrench in what they're trying to do. They beat Auburn 27-10 last week. Hate to tell you, I don't think Auburn's very good. We'll get to them in a second because they're playing Georgia. But somehow, Max Johnson, the backup for Texas A&M, and KJ Jefferson for Arkansas might be 2 of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. So, just wild. Syracuse 4-0, hosting Clemson 2-2. How often can you say that in the past 15 years? Not too often. This is on ABC. Clemson's favored by 6.5. This is a big deal because Syracuse has come damn close to beating Clemson at least 2 out of the past 4 or 5 years, just off the top of my head. They had an opportunity last year when they got off to like their 4-5-0 start and then played Clemson on the road. They were driving late. They had an opportunity to kick a field goal to tie the game, and they threw an interception instead. That's the route they decided to go and lose the game. So Syracuse is always in this game, even when Clemson has better years. I believe they had an opportunity to beat a Trevor Lawrence in one of his seasons as well. They led late and then gave up a touchdown drive the other way. So Syracuse is always in the mix. They've looked okay against not great competition so far this season, so they can certainly be in the mix here. The Orange crowd will be, all excited for this one. They beat Army 29-16 last week. They won at Purdue 35-20, and Purdue's not a good team, so nothing too exciting. But man, it's just something about the Orangemen, man, and the way the Clemson's looking. This is a channel flip game. This is borderline like you have to watch this game, but it might be just slow as hell. So it's in the channel flipping section for me. Other notable games in the noon window, we have Northwestern, who rallied from, I think, 17 down to beat Minnesota in overtime last week to move to 2-2. How about that? They are hosting number 6 Penn State on the Big Ten Network. The Nittany Lions favored by almost 4 touchdowns. That's about where I expect it to be. That same Minnesota Gophers team will be hosting Louisiana. Gophers are 2-2. Louisiana is 3-1. That's also on the Big Ten Network. Tulane, don't sleep on the Green Wave, the Green Wavers. This is still a team that can win 10-plus games and the American Conference and make it to a New Year's Day bowl game and have one of the top offenses in the country and still a very good quarterback in Michael Pratt, who I believe is back under center. They are 3-1. They only had that loss to Ole Miss at home when he was out. A game their final score is not indicative of how close it was. He could have been a difference. They're playing that UAB team, ESPN2. Tulane's favored by 3+ touchdowns in that one, but still, Green Wave are on, trying to roll up and do some damage there. James Madison, 4-0, hosting South Alabama, always a feisty, well-coached team. 2-2, Sun Belt battle, ESPNU, Madison favored by 3 points. The afternoon slate, 22 games, 5 ranked teams, one top 25 matchup. I guess the rest are in the evening window. Good news. Pac-12 Network, ACC Network, CW Network, Peacock, ESPN Plus, all the weird networks have crappy games. You don't really need to worry about all the weird ones. You know, the CW has 1-3 Boston College hosting 0-4 Virginia. So I wouldn't break your neck trying to find that one. Pac-12 Network's going to take 2-2 California hosting 1-3 Arizona State with about 40 scholarship players busted and banged up. And then Peacock has, what does Peacock have here? ACC Network has 2-2 Georgia Tech hosting 1-3 Bowling Green. Peacock has 1-3 Purdue hosting 2-2 Illinois. Just games that are just not relevant or exciting or have a lot going on right now. Your top watch, number 3 Texas 4-0 hosting number 24 Kansas 4-0 on ABC at 3:30. Kansas favored by 16-ish. This might have moved up a little bit. Texas, of course, doing damage, moving forward, progressing towards maybe the playoffs. However, Kansas, and of course, Texas looked great last week, 38-6 on the road to Baylor. Kansas has looked better in the trenches, do a lot of fun play action stuff. Jaden Daniels is always fun to watch, good running back there, and Neal. They might be able to hang with Texas for a bit. It would be something else if Kansas beat them. They managed to, was it just last year? Just last year, a year or two ago. I believe it was overtime. But man, Kansas, they struggled a couple weeks ago against a bad Nevada team on the road, but they really took apart Illinois. They beat slushy BYU last week. And it's just a team. It's got something going. Lance Leopold won multiple national championships at Division II or Division III level. And Kansas, if you can get it right in the trenches and have some skill position players, you can hang in there. Now, in theory, Texas has all of that and more, plus depth. So we'll see. This is their first test in the Big 12 schedule, and might be one of their best ones. Kansas is not a bad ball club. This will be one of the most actually exciting games on the slate with a little bit of stakes on it. So Texas, Kansas, ABC, 3:30. Your channel flipper, I only got one in here. Memphis is hosting Boise State. This is not a conference matchup. Memphis is in the American. Boise State is in the Mountain West, but this is a 4 o'clock ESPN2. Memphis favored by 3.5. They are 3-1 now. They did catch a body here the other week. They lost to Missouri 34-27. It feels like Seth Henigan has been the quarterback there forever, and it seems like I haven't been able to pronounce his name forever. The defense is not the highlights, but I don't know that they're a bad group. I don't know if this is a great team, to be honest. I don't think that Memphis is an awesome team, but the fact that they're given some respect and favored over Boise State is something. Boise at 2-2 has their own problems, mostly throwing the football. They rely on their run game. They managed to beat San Diego State on the road 34-31, and the Aztec offense is not it's gross. It's hot garbage. Taylor Green was 12 for 22 for 162 and a touchdown last week, but they rolled up over 200 yards rushing on the ground, and the defense isn't bad either. This, to me, is an interesting matchup of two non-Power 5 teams, one that wants to put it in the air in Memphis, one that wants to keep it on the ground in Boise State, but both the teams that can compete for their conference titles. Notable watches. Georgia will be playing on the road at Auburn. This is going to be highly advertised as a game that's worth watching. The Auburn was 3 for 15 on third down last week. They had 56 passing yards against A&M. I don't think they've had more than 100 passing yards this year. They're not good. They're so not good. It's on CBS, big game, 14.5 point. Georgia's favored. It's a road game, of course. Have to give Auburn something for hosting the game there. But, man, Georgia's had its struggles, not getting after people as much in the pocket, but Auburn's just not a good team. If anything, Georgia's going to slow roll and slowly suffocate them out, but Auburn's bad. Nebraska, 2-2. I'm surprised they're 2-2. They're hosting number 2 Michigan on Fox. It's the Fox game afternoon. Michigan 17-point favorites. Still haven't covered a spread. Maryland, 4-0, hosting Indiana at 2-2 on the Big Ten Network. I have not seen an Indiana game this year, and other than watching to see how Tulia's doing for the Terrapins, I don't plan on seeing one yet. Texas Tech has had its struggles. They're 1-3. They're hosting Houston, who's 2-2 on FS2. The Red Raiders, again, up and down, 8.5 point favorites. UCF, quarterback injuries, 3-1. They're hosting Baylor, who's 1-3, FS1. They can't lose to a struggling Baylor squad whose coach is getting a little toasty on where he's at there. 11.5 point favorites I see for Central Florida. It's possible that I would guess that gets bet up, would be my guess. They lost to Kansas State 44-31 on the road last week. I would think that the Knights would still have some say in the Big 12 race. It's a pretty good team there. Vanderbilt's hosting Missouri. The Vandies are 2-3. Missouri is ranked at 23rd now. They're 4-0, and they're almost 2 touchdown favorites on the road. That's on the SEC network. That's a 4 o'clock game. Now your evening slate. 17 games. 7 top 25 teams are playing. 2 ranked matchups. So again, the evening is the top slates. I put 2 top watches in here. Ole Miss is ranked 20th. They're 3-1. They're hosting LSU's 13th. They're 3-1. This is the big ESPN game. LSU favored by a couple 3. Well, high over under 67.5. Both of these teams are kind of blah right now. If Jaden Daniels can't take advantage of his weapons there at LSU, then they just suck. He's been playing very, very well for the most part. But small sample size, Florida State, they ended up getting crushed. He wasn't playing well. They had to survive against Arkansas last week, but then he played really well against Mississippi State and Grambling. So what will he do on the road against Ole Miss? I'm not sure that he's going to do awesome, but they do have some talent there. Just not as much as was expected, I don't think. Ole Miss doesn't really want to throw the ball against LSU, although that could be exploited. The Rebels want to run the ball, but again, I don't know if Judkins is quite healthy yet. They couldn't do much against Alabama at all last week, but you wouldn't really expect that. Less than 2 yards per carry, 3 for 14 on third down. Only 1 turnover, though. So not sure what to expect from 2 really inconsistent teams. It's just they beat the middling teams for the most part and the bad teams, and they lose to the good ones. That's where we're at right now. And LSU's probably not as good as they were last year. But Ole Miss will be hosting LSU. We'll see. But one of these is going to catch their second loss less than halfway through the season. Duke is hosting Notre Dame. I wasn't sure what to think of this. Is Duke a really good team? They're 4-0. They're 17th. Notre Dame's 4-1. They're 11th. Lost to, of course, Ohio State last week. This is the 7:30 ABC. Notre Dame's favored by less than a touchdown. Duke just gets it done. They force turnovers. They take advantage of turnovers. They score points, 28 against Clemson, 42 against Lafayette, 38 against Northwestern, 41 against UConn. So they're not putting up, 50, 60, 70. But they do damage. The defense is, good. 7-7, 14-7 given up. The quarterback there, Leonard, of course, he didn't put up great numbers against Clemson, but he's still doing all right. Almost a 68% completion percentage, which is not high. 7.9 per target. Only 2 touchdowns on the year, but he's able to move. He's able to get out of the pocket. 4 rushing touchdowns. That's the difference. And, they don't need him to necessarily air it out all the time. They just do good things. And Notre Dame, against first competition, albeit probably a top 6 team in the country, just struggled. And maybe we'd be talking a little bit differently. Well, I guess I wouldn't be, because I still said Ohio State didn't look as awesome either. So Notre Dame, I just don't know. On the road, are they going to lose another one? I don't know. But if Duke can stay and even hang in this game, that would be really something. Channel flip games. Oklahoma's hosting Iowa State. Iowa State, for the love of God, is just going to bite into you and claw into you. They're still 2-2. Oklahoma 4-0. Struggled against Cincinnati. Now they're back at home for this game, favored by almost 3 touchdowns. But this is at 7 o'clock on FS1. It would be something with the Cyclones hung around for a bit. Tennessee, I'm just not high on. They're 3-1. They're ranked 21st, and I think they got problems all over the place. South Carolina's 2-2. This is the 7:30 SEC network, and this is the Spencer Rattler or Bust show. And sometimes it's worth attending. I also have TCU hosting West Virginia. TCU's 3-1. West Virginia's a surprising 3-1. They're just doing smart things, running the ball, playing some defense, stuff like that. That's 8 o'clock ESPN2. TCU, of course, known at this point for getting spattered by Colorado, has been doing some smart things. They're favored by almost 13 points here. That's a Big 12 game. One of them will be 4-1. Worth talking about there. Notable games. Stanford, maybe not notable. Stanford will be hosting Oregon. It'll probably be a bloodbath, but if Stanford's starting quarterback is healthy there, and the Ducks are, just kind of chilling, they might hang around. 27-point favorites are the number 9 Oregon Ducks at 6:30 on the Pac-12 network. Iowa's hosting Michigan State. Anyone could beat Iowa, and anyone could lose 10-0 to Iowa. That's about my stance on it. So this is the Peacock NBC game at 7:30. 3-1 Iowa, 2-2 Michigan State. Almost 2 touchdown favorites is Iowa. That just seems so high when you can't move the football. Michigan State can do a few things. Air Force, they're good. 4-0. Hosting San Diego State, 2-3. They're not so great. Defense is good, though. Air Force, might have to watch a little bit of that. They could win the Mountain West. Late night games, 3 of them. 3 ranked teams are playing. I'm going to tell you who they are. 9 o'clock. We got an SEC battle at 9 o'clock at night on the Eastern Standard Time. ESPN? Wild. 2-2 Mississippi State welcomes in number 12 Alabama, who's 3-1 and still struggling. They have not looked good the entire year, but they just might pile drive Mississippi State, who refuses to throw the football with Will Rogers, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He has half the passing yards that Penix has this year when he was neck and neck with him at this point last season. It is a horrible mismanagement of your roster talent. Horrible. Somehow Alabama's 2 touchdown plus favorite. And they should be that over anyone at this point. Literally anyone. That's ESPN 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock, Pac-12 Network steals Arizona at 3-1, hosting 4-0 Washington, who's ranked number 7. I think Jane DeLora was hurt for Arizona. I hope he's back, because between these two teams, they have 5 of the best, maybe 8 receivers in the Pac-12. And if you were to rank the top 10, I'd put a number, 12, 15 in the country, they still might have 5 of the best receivers. It's insane. Washington's defense is still very good, but just wide receivers. If you get the Pac-12 network, wide receivers. And finally, 10:30, FS1 for us normal people. We'll get Fresno State ranked 25th at 4-0, and they might legitimately be a top 25 team. They're very good. They're playing 0-4 Nevada and favored massively. That's on FS1. So it really stinks that we can't get. Might have to find out how to get that Arizona-Washington game. But that's your late night slate. Your must-watch game for the day, I have Duke hosting Notre Dame. I think it's a big deal if Duke wins. I think it's a big deal if Notre Dame loses. Your audible, Syracuse at Clemson. Flip over to that one in the noon window. That's a big deal. That might be a top viewing. Another loss. Can you imagine Clemson being 2-3, less than halfway through the season? Oh, my goodness. Check-in game. I had Auburn hosting Georgia. I'm not sure what I was on when I put that together. Let's change that up, shall we? Let's say your check-in game is West Virginia at TCU, which I usually do a notable game just to see what's going on. But we'll say that one. See how that's going. You might have a team that's pretty well positioned in the Pac-12 to come out of that. Small screen Scarlet, I'm going James Madison hosting South Alabama. Two pretty decent schools there, and James Madison doing damage again in only its second year at the FBS level. Underrated, Memphis hosting Boise State. It could go a lot of different ways here. That could also be a small screen Starlight, but just, again, a non-Power 5 conference between two guys fighting for their potential conference championship. Boise State's going to have to go through Air Force and Fresno. Memphis is going to have to go through Tulane at least in the American. And your late night snack would be Arizona hosting Washington if you're able to get that. If not, it's obviously going to be Mississippi State hosting Alabama. Thanks for tuning in. Limited editing here and short, obviously. Just got a lot of stuff going on this week, but I couldn't not do a podcast. I got to do something. Littler thoughts either here or on michaelwelch.com. I still put my NFL picks up and do a little piece on that as well. So check that out, michaelwelch.com. Spelled with no E, but Welch like an OG. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later. Bye.